The time is now 5:01. We'll now move to a roll call. Ms. Johnson, please call the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Present.
Mrs. Olivo,
Present.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are three present.
With a quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee meeting will come to order. Good evening and welcome to the June 15th, 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I am Dr. Felton Moss, Committee Chair and District 7 Board Member. It brings me great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. For those who are unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. If there are no objections, the committee shall adopt the June 15th, 2026 meeting agenda. There being no objections, the June 15th, 2026 meeting agenda is adopted. Approval of the meeting minutes. If there are no corrections, the committee shall approve the May 12th, 2026 committee meeting minutes as distributed. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, the minutes are approved. We'll now move to public comment. There is one public speaker this evening. To our registered speakers, you are allotted 3 minutes to share your remarks. Speaking time may not be transferred to another individual. The board will not engage in dialogue during this portion of the meeting. Speakers are expected to refrain from using profanity or derogatory language. A warning will be issued once. Continued misconduct may result in the speaker being muted or removed from the meeting. To support a professional and courteous environment, speakers are encouraged to refer to the individuals by their titles, such as chair, board member, superintendent, or principal, rather than by name. Our first and only public speaker tonight that registered is Brandon Spriggs. This is an individual speaking on cameras or tracking devices showed for nonverbal students. Is Mr. Spriggs here?
Dr. Moss, so I don't see him in the attendees list. So I don't believe he's present at the moment. Think you're
Okay.
muted.
Okay. Given that he's not here, we'll move to our legislative update, which we do not have one tonight. So we'll move to item 7.0, proposed policies. There are 5 agenda items for discussion. Each item will include 2 rounds of discussions with 2.5 minutes allotted per round. If a third round is needed, the committee will vote on whether to proceed. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to present the draft F school year 2026-2027 policy and governance work plan. This is item 7.1. Ms. Welsh?
Good evening. Ms. Johnson, would you mind putting that up so we can just go through it? Well, I can talk a minute until it comes up. So your board policy 8101 on policy development speaks to the fact that in May or June of the ending school year, the superintendent is supposed to provide a recommendation of policies that he feels should either be developed or need to be revised. And then he also will provide policies that are based on the legislative session for this past year, and what if there are any that require policies. And actually, this year there were a good number of bills that passed the requiring policies. And then if there's any policies that need to be rescinded. And then the other one is components of any administrative procedures that actually are not do not have need to be developed in order to align with the policy, because the policy has said that you're authorizing the superintendent to develop administrative procedures. So it has a list of administrative procedures, and then any policies where we have an administrative procedure but we do not have a policy. So briefly, I'll just go through these with you quickly. The first group of policies, and sort of hard to see, but they are under component one, have to do with just the recommended ones for revision or to actually develop. And some of these were on the list for last year, but then we had other things that happened that either bumped these policies or we had a couple of canceled meetings or whatever, so we didn't get to those policies. So those policies are listed, as well as there are several that have been added, like Title IX has been added again because of changes in law, so we need to incorporate that. And also our policy 0103 was added because of the fact that the Supreme Court ruled on the fact that if a student is going through a transition period from one gender to another, our policy says you will not tell the parents. And actually, the Supreme Court ruled against that and said that school systems are required to tell the parent because it is their child and it's a psychologically really, important time and they need the support of the parents. So that is one we will be looking at. And then I know students and rights and responsibilities. I think Dr. Moss, you had asked that we bring that up for this upcoming year when we had a discussion. And then purchasing is one that we never finalized. And you had again asked if we wait and put that forward for this current year. So we will look at that. And then the other ones, the superintendent also asked the chiefs if they had any policies that they thought were important just because of the nature of our operations, and that the policy itself should be updated. And so several of these reflect those recommendations also. In addition to that, then we also have, if you scroll down, the policies that because of this legislative session, we have to go in. Some are minor revisions, but they still are requiring us to go in and update the policy so that it's in alignment with the law. So for example, the interacting with immigration enforcement agents that we were so excited to complete. And now we do need to go back in and open that policy for next year because they have increased expanded as sensitive locations, one being school bus. So that is substantive language in the law, which is substantive language in the policy. So that's why that one will come back up. And then, although artificial intelligence is on the agenda for tonight, only because in that policy, it says that you all will review it once a year. So we will review it, but I did not recommend any changes to it only because then this bill passed, Senate Bill 720, which talks about AI guidelines, professional development, and collaborative. It's called AI Ready School Act. And that is where the MSD is now being required to provide guidelines on what should be in the policies. So I did talk to IT though, and they said they didn't think there was a need for change right now. Anyway, but saying that we could very well we'll review it next year, but we will also probably have to make some changes based on what MSDE provided us. And then the other one, which was student use of social media and portable electronic devices in schools, we actually had that on the list for this year, but then we had a bill that passed. And once I saw that bill, I ended up pushing it back to the end of this year, just waiting to see if it passed or not. And it did pass. And that bill will actually require some substantive changes to our policy. So we'll need to bring that one up. And then was House Bill 575, which is student attendance, absence, and truancy, excused or discretionary absences for civil engagement. So that our policy on attendance will also have to be revised to include what's in that particular bill. And then student safety and this one is just recent. We just did in March of 26. So this one, student safety, prevention of child sexual abuse and reporting suspected child abuse and neglect, SB 6885 was passed, which is sexual abuse and sexual misconduct model response policy. So we will have to look at that model policy and see if we've missed anything in our policy. And if so, then we'll have to update our policy to reflect those changes in the law. And then the last one is our community schools. And the blueprint, the Senate Bill 311, the blueprint for Maryland's future revisions, there is a provision in that particular bill that talks about that has increased wraparound services for research-based interventions, which we never had before. And our policy doesn't include that. And that would be a substantive change. So we have to bring that policy up so that we can make revisions. So some of these, a couple of these might be very quick changes. It all depends on people who are, making the doing some of these model policies and stuff, and then some probably might require some substantive changes to the current policies. So we do have a good number based on last year. So, on the platform, we said that we don't support legislators taking over the role of the school board in terms of governance, because it's the job of the school board to come up with policies. But they did a very good job this year because they had, 6 bills, I think, that impacted our policies. So, which is fine. So we will go ahead and have them on the list. We also have some policies for rescission that no longer are really one is the first one has to do with rules of procedure for 4205 and 6202 hearings, which we now revised that to broke it out into 2 policies. So that just needs to be rescinded. And then a couple are ones that, for example, replacement of clothing damaged in the line of duty. That's not really policy material, and credit references of personnel. We don't look at those things also. And then open lunches and administrative allotments. So those are ones that we listed that will come up for the committee to discuss and make some decisions about what they would like to revise. Or if they want to rescind it or not. And then, of course, component 3 just lists out a good number of our policies that we've worked on, which now the APs have to, some of them, the APs are being worked on right now, but they either have to be finalized or they need to start working on them and get them revised to align with the policy. And then the last one has to do with things and we already had so many, so of course, so many policies already listed. So the next ones, the 2 that I thought might be very important for us to look at, because we have APs for, would have to be PTA, PTSA, and PTO, because I know there has been a lot of conversation about schools having PTOs or PTSOs and stuff. So essays. So I thought that'd probably be a good one to really address through policy. And then the other one has to do with language access services for communication with parents and guardians who are not primary speakers of English. And when you think about how many, what the percentage of our population who are, English is not the first language, and that means our parents, of course, that's not the first language, and many of them don't even speak English. It's critically important, and something, and multilingual students is one of our priorities. So it just makes sense that this would be a policy that we would want to probably look at. A couple of these policies in the first group, they actually did come Cindy was keeping a list of ones that board members had mentioned and other people had mentioned. And so they come from that list too. And I don't know if you want to, query them over the summer to see if there's other ones they want, because this will be coming up in August to vote on this, to finalize it. So, or if any suggestions you have right now that you would rather work on, that we can take one off and put another one on. So that's it.
Thank you, Miss Welsh. I'm going to see at this time if any of my colleagues have questions and comments. I do have one. Cindy, are you going to speak to the fact that you've done the survey and included these already from board members?
No, which is terrible because I usually press everybody to do that. I wanted to ask Ms. Robin, I'm not sure if I saw the public comments
It's
policy
up
on
there.
there.
It's the first
Okay.
one.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Colleagues, do you all have any questions or comments? I do have one, but I'm going to defer to you all before I give mine. And I believe Ms. Jackson Saunders is here now, so we want to make sure we reflect her attendance.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Vice Chair Olivo.
Sorry, I was so late there. I did want to ask Cindy, between now and the August meeting when we approve this, will you be able to query board members and see if there are other policies that board members want us to review, or is that something we should do as a committee? Can you please advise on that?
Yes, I could send out the survey tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
I had believed that the survey had already gone out. Are you sure the survey hasn't gone out?
It went out, but I will just resend it tomorrow.
Okay, all right. I was about to say. Um, Miss Welsh,
Yes.
I did not intend to bring the purchasing policy back up again. When we tabled it, it was tabled
Oh,
indefinitely. So I didn't mean to put it back on the docket for next year. And just to be I also know that there are shifts in that area. And so I don't know if in the first year they should be taking on new policy revisions. So I'd actually like to remove that from the policy list, if you will. And
okay.
then and the second thing is, I don't know if we need to include this, but board member Ajakaye has a student device policy that she wants to create. So it may be a new policy. But I don't know if um, it would dovetail well under our student device policy. She wants to like give kids access to certain devices, and she's been working with Chief Zuckerman on this. So I don't know if it needs to be reflected on this or if it should just follow our new policy process whenever it's written. I don't know if it's made it to you yet or not, but I know she's starting some work on it. But I wanted to create space here to make sure it's in the work plan so that it doesn't get lost. And I think she has one more board meeting. And so I want to make sure it's reflected, her priority is reflected in our documents. But because we approved this work plan on the 25th, right?
And no, you'll first, it'll come back to committee to
On
finalize
25th.
it, and then it'll go to the August board meeting.
Yeah. So if we could first let me know if I'm right to even be thinking that it should be in the work plan.
Well, I think and the policy, the policy development policy talks about anyone can bring to your attention something that they think should be a policy include. And so I don't think we should, and this is just my thinking, but I think you probably don't want to dismiss it just because it's not in the work plan or it's not something. I think it's one of those things that we list it, we bring it up to the committee, you have conversation about it, and as you see what she's proposing and everything from there, then you make a determination if this is something that as a committee that you would want as a policy.
Yeah, I'm about to run out of time here, but I'd like to include it if possible, given
Okay.
that the student board member is leaving. And I know sometimes legacy projects, if they're not etched in the document, they may or may not occur. Not to suggest that the new chair of this committee won't make it happen in the future, but I want to just make sure I take care of that for board member Ajakaye.
I'll put it on the list.
All right, appreciate you. Um, uh, Director Adelaide?
Yes, I do have one more request, and that was from board member Anderful. I know she's going to take my neck if I don't mention it. She said she wants us to review the transportation policy. When I look back, it was done, I want to say, I may be incorrect, but I want to say it was done in either 2002 or 2005. A constituent brought up the issue to her, and she would really like us to review it.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Adelaide, for bringing that up. I believe she forwarded that to Vice Chair Olivo and I think it's about kindergartners riding a bus and pre-K students riding a bus. So
Correct.
it may be important for us to also link well, no, they'll do it later. I was going to say the admin procedure because I actually think that's taken care of an admin procedure more than it is the board policy. But we can add it for discussion, given that a board member requested it.
Wow, and it might be good only because we have so many changes in transportation over the past couple years that we might be thinking slightly different than what they wrote 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We can add
And
that too.
Okay. And last comment here, it's not reflected here, but Board Member Boozer Strother, Board Member Boozer Struthers wanted us to make sure that the administration is implementing the alumni policy on alumni engagement that was written by she and K. Alexander Wallace when he was on the board 5 years ago. So we either need to slate that for review or like some update from the administration on where we are prior to board member Boozer Struthers' retirement from the board, because that is one of her priorities before she goes. I don't see it on the list.
So she did bring it up. I mean, I read it in one of the emails or something, and she
Okay.
was concerned because she felt like that not they had not implemented, the administration had not implemented the alumni policy at all, and moved forward with it. And so I did bring that to Dr. Collins' attention. And actually, I know that she was working with Sheila Jackson and a couple other people, and they were going to move forward and do whatever they need to do to implement. So I'm thinking maybe we should first have them at least provide us an update of where they are with the implementing, because I just remember her telling me that they would make that a priority to get that implemented.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you could do that, and then as we bring this discussion together and to a close, Director Adling, Adlai, could you make sure we talk to all the departing board members about their policy priorities before they leave to make sure it makes the work plan? I just want to flag it for them. I know they may have some things that didn't happen during their 4 years on the board. So I just want to make sure it makes the work plan.
Will do.
Okay.
And Chair Moss, I'm gonna, if we get a whole list of some more policies, extra policies, because there's only so many policies we can get done in a year, I will probably go through then and possibly pull a couple of these other policies out so that we have room for the new policies that they want.
I appreciate your wisdom on that. I just know that these folks have served 4 years and they might have some priorities that didn't happen. It'll be good for
Sure.
us to take care of before they go.
Okay.
Okay, are there no other questions or comments on this item? Uh, board member Jackson Saunders, I know this is your first round with us on this. Essentially, what happens here is we set the policy work plan for the next academic year. So if there's anything that, even if it's topics, if you don't even know the policy number, which I don't know any of them by heart, if topically, if you want something discussed, this is the time to get it in the work plan. And tonight is not the final night. There will be another round of this too, but I know you haven't been here before for this engagement, and I don't know if you got orientation around this, but this is a good time to jump in if you have a topic, or you can wait until the next board meeting.
Thank
I mean,
you. Thank you,
committee.
Chair Moss. I really appreciate that explanation. Unfortunately, no orientation on this, but there are a few topics that have come up in my short period here. So I won't take the time at this point. But I will have them ready. I do want to say I'm so excited about our attention to the PTAs and the PTSO. So thank you so much for that. That is a huge centerpiece of what I think we have to be engaged in. So I'm grateful for that one. There are a couple more. Maybe I can just mention a topic or two that there seems to be some gaps with regard to our transfer policy of pre-K students who are placed by the system initially, and parents not seeing the policy written that in order for those students to stay in those out of boundary pre-K4 placements, that they must apply for a transfer. It just doesn't make sense to them normally, because my student is already there. So I don't want to go, into detail, but those are some of the issues that have come up. I've looked at the policy and it just isn't connecting that they have to make a move. And no one, unfortunately, at the school level is really, communicating what they need to do. So something to make those particular topics a little stronger. And I have about three more, but I will definitely be ready for round two. So thank you, for explaining.
No, I appreciate you bringing these up, and we'll make sure you have time around that. I'm sure Miss Welsh got that one. I do want to
I did.
flag that happens with our boundary immersion programs that they're expected to reapply. There's no automatic enrollment.
Mhm.
So this has been an issue for me in my district as well. So you're right. It's certainly worth the board and the administration having a conversation around what that means and I think the strategic realignment work group will have some recommendations around this a little bit too. So Ms. Welsh, if we could, add that to the list and perhaps substitute something else to make sure that one rises to
Okay.
the top. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, the question is, shall the committee recommend the draft SY 2026-2027 work plan? There's no additional discussion. Ms. Johnson, will you take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Olivo,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
and Mr. Jackson. There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. The draft school year 2026 P&G work plan will be recommended to the full board for approval. And just so you know, changes can be made then too. But it did pass. Thank you. Now we'll move to policy 0116, which is our wellness, nutrition, and physical activity. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to provide an update on policy 0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity. Ms. Welsh.
So, I will tell you that because at the last policy meeting, there was a vote for it to go to the policy sponsor, I went ahead and made changes based on the conversation that the board, all of you had, as well as the presentation, and then sent it to OGC and to the superintendent for approval. So I actually went forward because of what had happened at the last meeting. And unfortunately, the day that we had the planning meeting, board member Olivo, I couldn't hear you because we were in that training. So
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
realize you had said bring it back for discussion. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll share what the changes I made based on both the committee conversation and the presentation, and certainly if there's other changes that need to be made, and then we can do that. But depending on how that plays out, it might be that it could possibly go forward, I guess, for public comment. And the only reason I was thinking that you had sent it to this policy sponsor was because of the timing of it to try to get it through so that public comment would go out now, and then we'd have the information for the August meeting, and then it would actually go to the board for the September meeting, so that we're starting fairly early in the school year to implement this. But regardless, we'll just go through. So, Ms. Johnson, if you could please put that policy up. It's the policy 0116. And then if you can scroll to page 4. Right there, yes. And maybe just make it just a tad larger. I can hardly even see it. Okay, thank you. So then if you scroll down, please. Perfect. So what I did, I said all schools should offer this is some of the same language that was there, it's just slightly changed based on some of the information that the group had provided us in their presentation. So it says all schools shall offer students the opportunity for supervised physical activity throughout the school day to enhance learning, concentration, memory, attention, creativity, analytical thinking. And then it has to do with elementary. B, which should be over there. It must have jumped into the middle of the page. But anyway, it says all middle schools shall incorporate school-wide dedicated time during the school day for students to engage in physical activity. I did not add anything more specific though, because because I walked away with the impression that they're saying we need to make this, that this is for all schools and it is a school-wide dedicated time. It's not one middle school teacher does it, one doesn't. But at the same time, I don't know that I thought they were saying to us, but don't dictate exactly how it's going to be done because there might be differences within the schools, but they'll still be doing it type of thing. So that's the only reason I put that language in, because it's basically you, the board, saying this is what we want happening at middle school. And then I have that school staff may not deny participation in recess or other physical activity as a form of discipline or punishment unless safety of students is in question. And then I think there's something further down. If you could scroll down, please. Yes. So the superintendent designee shall provide professional development for teachers to learn techniques that promote physical activity and how to integrate it across curricula and throughout the school day. Because in that presentation, what came up was that not all teachers really might embrace this at all, only because they might not really know how to implement it. And so they really do need to have some guidance and training in that arena. So that's why I added I took out all the stuff about the study group because it was done, but did incorporate that language. And I believe that was the only change that was needed in the policy. So I think that's it for that policy.
Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments? We'll start with Vice Chair Oliva.
Thank you so much. Ms. Walsh, I think that looks great. I agree with you that I think what the school staff was suggesting is that our all of our students need opportunities for physical activity, but I agree with you that being really prescriptive about exactly when that is offered is not ideal, and that each building should be able to set that. So thank you for these, and I appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I wasn't here for this last discussion, but I'm curious if we talked around how this impact HR and how principals schedule and if they're going to be looking for more units for a physical education teacher. So will this requirement impact budget, right? Will this have like budget implications in spaces where a principal may be like, oh, I don't have enough special physical PE teachers to be able to meet this board policy, or are we clear that this can happen during instruction time?
So what I walked away with was that first of all, they had a couple principals that came also, and they were they pretty much said, we do have the time within the day to be able to work this out, that there's pockets of time at different times, because that was one of my questions and concerns, only because the curriculum is so intense and there's so many pieces to it. And that I don't think they ever were thinking it would be the PE teachers that would implement this, that it would really be up to the teachers, but that they will need to have some training. So if there's any expense at all involved, it would have to be in the professional development of it to help them now. And I could see certainly like because there were several players that came that really had some pretty good knowledge about the kinds of things that could be done and everything. And I can absolutely see them, especially the supervisor of PE, putting together like a training module that could be shared with at the middle schools and on one of their professional development days. Then they would, that would be one of the sections that they would do during that PD day.
Okay. I appreciate you answering that. I just don't want it to come back and have a budget implication later. That principals see this as a means that I'm going to need another unit to be able to carry out and meet the demand of this. And particularly in schools where we're already strapped to get outcomes for young people, where they may not want to include this in the math or literacy block, I can see this manifesting in another way. So I just want to make sure the policy is clear around we expect this to happen as part of routine instruction and then it's not additive, if you will.
And they also talked about working on the administrative procedure and putting more like working out like all the details of the things that you're concerned about. So that's also why I was not very prescriptive, only because of the fact that they did say they were going to work through that so that they could be implemented appropriately.
Any additional questions from colleagues? Okay. Seeing that there are no questions, Ms. Johnson, will you take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson. There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity will be released for public comment. The next policy is 0123, artificial intelligence. Ms. Welsh, will you present policy 0123?
Yes. So this policy, I did not
And did we,
have.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Did we mean to number this 0123?
I have no idea.
All right, I got you.
It just came up that way. That's funny. Anyway, it sort of goes with AI in a way. So that's funny. Anyway, there's no changes to the current policy only because of the fact that we'll probably have to make some changes once the MSDE puts together all their guidelines and guidance. Now, I will say this: that our school system is advanced and is ahead of the game when it comes to AI, and they've done a tremendous amount of work in that arena. And had to put together an administrative procedure to go with this and everything. And there's a good amount of training that they're doing with staff related to AI. So it'll be curious to see what MSD comes out with, because I did have a conversation with our chief, and he said he thought that we probably would have everything that MSD wanted. And I said, well, that would be wonderful. But because we have a provision in the policy that says to have review this every year, we'd be coming back and looking at next year. And then if we have any changes we have to make because of the MSD guidance, then we'll be able to do that. But other than that, right now, I think the policy does meet our needs and does address what needs to happen in the schools and in offices too.
Any questions from my colleagues? Okay. Seeing there are no questions, Ms. Johnson, will you please call the roll? The question is, shall the committee recommend policy 0123, artificial intelligence, to the policy sponsor for revision approval?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
and Mr. Jackson. There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 0123 will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Moving to the next item, policy 5161, immunizations. Ms. Welsh, please provide the update on 5161 immunizations.
So interestingly enough, this is a new policy. We did not have a policy. We had an administrative procedure, but we never had a policy to address the administrative procedure. And since immunizations has been a very hot topic for us, especially when a year ago we at the 2025 legislative session, we were working hard for language to assist in terms of when immunizations would be required at the start of the school year. And with the work of, I think, the school system working very closely with the Department of Health, Maryland Department of Health, this past year, we ended up really saving. We received all the money, a good amount, minimal amount of money we didn't receive in terms of the per pupil amount that we're supposed to receive for students who are enrolled. And that's because they were immunized. So I think the collective effort of the school system working with the Maryland Department of Health, as well as the advertising and making people aware and everything, has made a difference. So because it was such a hot topic last year, that's why I thought we should put it on as a policy, because of, because it's important. It impacts us. It impacts us and impacts kids, because if they're not immunized, then they're missing out in school. And probably the worst thing is to not be at school when it starts, and possibly missing weeks of education, which puts them on they're on a poor footing to move forward. So this policy is basically it's based on what is required of us. It basically says that the Board of Ed is committed to promoting the physical, mental, and social health of students and staff by requiring all students enrolled in Prince George County Public Schools, pre-K through grade 12, to be immunized from vaccine preventable diseases. And this just provides the guidelines so that we meet the Maryland Department of Health's immunization requirements. And we have definitions for immunization, Maryland Department of Health, and parent. And then as far as the standards for the policy, it says that, first of all, the superintendent designee shall have each school require parents new to PGPS provide the mandated immunization documentation upon enrollment, and for continued enrollment to meet the Maryland Department of Health immunization requirements for students. So it's when you start, and then like in your middle school years, you have to have some other immunizations to be able to continue. And then this also says that the superintendent designee shall establish processes to disseminate information to parents and the community regarding required immunizations for entry to PGPS at the time the students are registered for school and continued enrollment in PGPS, and the requirement to exclude a student from school if the student is not in compliance with state immunizations. So in the past, we've had a lot of newcomers, and I am certain that because of just coming in and you're just trying to get yourself situated and trying to understand everything, especially if you're coming in from a different country, you might not even realize that you have these immunization requirements. So we as a school system, if we're doing our work and really getting out there and communicating to families, and that information is out in a variety of places, then I think that at least helps those new families to know what it is they have to do. And then it says the superintendent designee shall ensure that school teams provide parents with immunization resources and work collaboratively with parents to ensure that their students receive the required vaccination. So again, the parent might know that they are required to be that their child needs to be immunized, but they might not know where they can even go. Where are these resources? What can they do? So the more we can get that information out to the community and the parents, the easier it makes it for those parents. And it's just one less thing that they have to struggle with trying to figure out what needs to happen for their student to be in school. And then the other thing is the student designee shall require each school to maintain and review immunization non-compliance data and follow up with parents who have not provided the required immunization documentation on a regular basis. And then it says the superintendent designee shall require all schools to exclude any student who has provided the mandated immunization, unless, and these are some exceptions in the law, that if the student is homeless and enrolls temporarily in accordance to COMAR, or the student is a child of a military family who enrolls without current vaccination and is temporarily enrolled, because oftentimes military families are doing a lot of moving. And then also, if the student presents appropriate documentation of medical contraindications and is exempted from the immunization requirement, or a student's parents documented religious objections meeting the MDH established religious exemptions. So those would be reasons that they would not be required. And then it also says the superintendent designee shall provide training to school staff regarding immunization documentation requirements and exceptions and exemptions to those requirements. And just that there should be a procedure that this policy authorizes the superintendent to develop a procedure to implement this policy. So that is sort of it in a nutshell for immunizations.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues on the immunization policy? Okay, being that there are no questions, The question is, shall the committee recommend policy 5161 immunizations to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Ms. Johnson, please take the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson. There are four in the affirmative.
There are four in the affirmative. Policy 5161 will move to the policy sponsor for revision. The last policy we have tonight is policy 8373, the Office of Internal Audit. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to provide the update for policy 8373, Office of Internal Audit. Ms. Welsh?
Thank you. So this policy is a policy that we have had. It's been in existence for a while, but it was it was not in our format for how policies are supposed to be. So I have not really made too many changes to it, except, I mean, some minor wording changes, but the real purpose was to put it into our format so that we actually have standards for the policy, which are broken out by organization and scope of work, and let me see what else, reporting, and I think that's it. There is heavy emphasis in this policy related to what the function of the internal audit is, which is audit office, which is to basically examine, all financial transactions, records, internal controls, and then evaluating compliance with applicable federal and state laws, as well as they are often dealing with different hotline complaints and things that come through that they then do investigations in and investigate. They also audit performance aspects of the school system as it might relate to it can relate to transportation, safety, a wide variety of areas of operation. So so that is probably the most. It's just mainly just reorganized. I will say that Ms. Deanna Thorpe, who is your director of internal audit, is here this evening, and we did have a brief conversation today, which I said that just because of timing, I had not had a chance to share this with her, but that certainly she would have the opportunity to share. But you might have some comments right now that you would like to share with the committee.
I don't actually. I did look through the revisions that were shared in the board documents and things. And like you mentioned, it's pretty much just some wording changes, just verbiage cleanup and things like that. So I didn't have any concerns or anything regarding what's been revised already or suggested.
So, Ms. Welsh, are we just going to send this back to revision approval tonight so she'll have more time to look over it
Yes.
and make some of those modifications? Is that the recommendation? Okay.
I had shared with her. I said that when I send it, if you approve to move forward to go out through that, then I would first send it to her, and then from there send it to OGC.
Okay. Colleagues, do you all have any questions then? Or will you want to wait to Director Thorpe has an opportunity to bless it? Okay. Well, we'll just move it on for revision so that Director Thorpe has an opportunity to look over it. Miss Johnson, the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 8373 to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Miss Johnson, please take the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
and Mr. Jackson. There are four in the affirmative.
There are four in the affirmative. Policy 8373, Office of Internal Audit, will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Our next item on the agenda tonight is 8.0, these are the policies for community input. So policy 1700, the Disabilities Issues Advisory Board, policy 3415, our school-based management teams, policy 8300, 4205 appeals, policy 9260, the auditor. The question is, shall the committee release the policies under agenda items 8.1 and 8.4 for public comments? Any questions or discussions about any of these? I will just say before we vote, this has been a long journey on these, and I'm so glad to see the DIAB one up. We've worked really hard with the Disabilities Issues Advisory Board to make these modifications. I believe Vice Chair Olivo, I believe Board Member Brown have passionately worked on these items, and I just want to flag as this one goes to community input. I know to come back to us. Board Member Boozer Struthers has been adamant about these school-based management teams, and so I'm just excited to see us move these items forward. Committee members, any questions or comments here? We've come a mighty long way, is what my grandmother would say. But seeing that there are no questions, Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call vote.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Absolutely aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
and Mr. Jackson. There are 4 in the affirmative.
Therefore, in the affirmative, the policies under agendas item 8.1 and 8.4 will be released for public comment. Thank you all. Next to last business item for the night. And other than adjournment, these are the policies for enactment. This is another praise. I mean, we have gotten our work done this year. Policy 3186, cost estimates for board resolutions. This is being rescinded. Policy 8301, 6202 appeals, policy 8302, 7305 appeals. Um, Opening meetings with prayer recension, policy 8384, certificates of recognition recension, policy 9305, proclamations. So the question is, shall the committee recommend the policies under agenda items 9.1 and 9.6 for full board enactment? Any discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, Ms. Johnson, please take the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders,
Aye.
and Mr. Jackson. There are 4 in the affirmative.
There being 4 in the affirmative, the policies under agenda items 9.1 and 9.6 will be recommended to the full board for enactment. Colleagues, we are at adjournment. The chair would at 5:53. The chair informs the public that the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will be on September 22nd, 2026. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information updates. Thank you all for great discussions and attendance. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 5:53. The June 15, 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Great job, everyone.